Happy almost Halloween, everybody.
Happy
Halloween.
I'm here with some great people to discuss Dracula, the classic by Bram Stoker. Here's my little tiny copy. And I've got thoughts. I think all of us kind of do. It's a classic, so I think there's a time issue here with when it was written. And we'll get on that. Let me introduce you to the people that we have here. So we have John from Hey Y'all Listen Up. Hey John.
Howdy.
Danielle from Book Chara. Now you don't have a BookTube channel, do you, Danielle?
Yeah, I do.
Oh well, I am not subscribed. I have to fix that.
With it, Stacy.
And of course, Steve and Brandy. Steve from Steve Talks About Talks Books and Stuff. He got rid of the about. And author Jeff Lane, who you guys have seen on my channel many times. I always enjoy having Jeff here. The rest of you as well, but Jeff especially.
Oh, yeah. I come with the channel. Like I'm a feature of the channel that YouTube sticks me on people's channels, and they can't get rid of me. It's like when you buy a laptop from Best Buy, it's got weird software.
And you get
rid of it. That's me.
We also have some people joining us in the chat. Saf is joining us. Hey, Saf.
Happy Halloween.
I don't know who else is here. If you're here, say hi so we know who's watching. So before we get started, I just want to say I don't think we're going to do a non-spoiler part. I think this is a classic. Most everybody kind of already knows the basics of the story. So I don't think we need to do non-spoilers versus spoilers, but I do want to start with your overall feelings about it before we dig into the story. So we'll start with you, John. What did you think?
I struggled to read it, but I can see why it's a beloved classic. I mean, the story there is, I think, the bones of it are good. It's just I had trouble with the structure of it.
Danielle, how about you?
Overall, it was okay for me. In the beginning, when Jonathan was stuck in the castle, I think that was probably like the most disturbing part for me. And then toward the end, when they excluded Mina from the conversation, when she was obviously the brains of the operation, that was really frustrating for me. And I felt like it ended very abruptly. It was kind of anticlimactic for me. So,
Brandy?
I actually really loved it. It wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't scary or anything, but it seems weird to compare it to Jane Austen, but I love reading Jane Austen, and I got Jane Austen vibes just because of the time period it was written in, I'm sure, and the area of the country. So, or the world, really. I really enjoyed reading it because it gave me those classic vibes that I get from reading Jane Austen, and just all the way that they court the women, and I always look for the romance in everything. So I loved that, and I really loved the format of it with the letter writing, and everything was in journals and letters, and I thought it was really good. I agree with Danielle about it being kind of an anticlimactic ending. I only gave it 4 stars. I know we're probably not there yet with what we've rated it, but it was pretty good. I enjoyed it.
How about you, Steve?
I think John and I are on the same page. It was a little bit of a struggle to read it, and I think the storytelling structure was a little, I don't know. It I couldn't get a rhythm reading the story. I couldn't get kind of into it, but I did enjoy it. It was fine, and I kind of wish I would have gone back and read this before I knew so much about vampires and horror and everything else, just to get that as a baseline, and then because nothing was really a surprise. I mean, because everything has been taken from this and used 1,000 times over, and it kind of reminded me of Neuromancer when we read that, and it wasn't as bad as Neuromancer, but don't come at me. but just the fact that there was so much influence from that book, you could tell that there was so much taken from horror and pop culture from that book. So in that sense, I appreciated it.
And Jeff.
Yeah, you guys are definitely hitting pretty much all my thoughts. I'm glad I read it. I was not entertained by it the way I am with some more modern novels, but I don't think it's the age of it, because I read novels in that era. Like, I love Dickens, and I think it's not so much the age, but I think it is. I think John's right on with it, and Steve said it too. Structure. I don't like I think it's called a postulary style with the letters and journals. I'm sure that can work really well if someone wants to play with that style a little bit, but this was a little straightforward, and I think because of that, it put some distance between us and the danger and the immediacy of the action and the threats. Like Brandy, I was all in for the romance, just all the courting of Lucy, and yeah, so that was. But I'm glad I read it. The language. I love the language of it. Actually, I kind of dug and get into. But I think it's an important read. I think it's good that I finally read it. I'm glad I haven't really seen any too many of the film versions and things like that. I think I did see the Keanu Reeves one in the movie theater way back when it was. But I don't remember anything about it, and I can't remember if it stuck to the narrative or not. But I'm glad we read it. Interesting.
So Saf says, I struggled until I started listening to the audiobook. Definitely helped. I think they are not quite through with it. Is that correct, Saf? And I did end up listening to it as well. The audiobook on Audible is free, and it has some really great narrators. I think it was now I'm getting
Tim Curry.
Yeah,
Alan
Tim Curry.
Cummings.
Yeah, so it was good.
That's probably why I liked it a little more than you guys too, because I listened to a lot of it.
I thought the narration was done really well, but it did suffer for the structure of the book, because you had I mean, that was just really it. You were hearing everything after the fact. You never felt like you were in the story, like Jeff was saying. So everything kind of didn't feel as impactful, except for maybe the scene where they're talking to Renfield, and he tells them that he basically let Dracula in. And Dracula had tricked him or something to let him in, and that he was upstairs, and they all run up there and find Mina and John. That was probably the only moment for me. But yeah, the ending was very much anticlimactic. I didn't feel the tension or the suspense that I think you were supposed to feel during that. And so it kind of, you're reading the story, you know where it's going to go, because it's a classic. We all kind of know that Dracula was going to get done away with, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. So that was what I was waiting for, and then it was just over. So yeah, I didn't think it was a terrible book. I did enjoy it. I gave it, if I were to read it today, if it was a modern book that I read today, not even including the language, just the story, it'd probably be a 3-star book for me. But having been a classic, it being something where so many books and stories have come from it, I would give it a 4-star. So I agree with Brandy on the 4 stars. I wish it was better. I had really had high hopes for it because it was a classic, but
I do agree with Steve when he said that, you can see it's kind of the progenitor of many other things that came after it. And that's kind of fun too, to go, things that we've just probably grown up with in our life as being part of pop culture, or part of, narrative fiction that we've all read. And we're going, oh, this is the beginning of that. This is where that came from. I had a similar experience when I read Ivanhoe. Sir Walter Scott, I think, wrote that. And you can see a lot of the beginnings of modern day adventure and the castles and horses and knights and stuff in that. I'm sure he was stealing and borrowing from other people too, but it is kind of neat to see early fiction and see those tropes that we love carried through.
Yeah, I agree. Ashley joined us. Hi, Ashley. She says she enjoyed the format. I've read lots of books that are in that kind of format, and for many of them, it works. It just didn't so much for Dracula. So
I
I've not
liked-
read.
why.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
I was just saying, I don't even know how to say why it didn't work. It just didn't for me. Do you all know why this is a standout vampire novel? Carmilla was written before Dracula, but isn't as widely. I don't even know what Carmilla is. Sapphire, who's the author of that? I'm gonna have to look it up. So let's talk about the lore, because that was the most interesting part of this book, was to kind of see where a lot of the lore that we recognize today in pop culture comes from. And there were things in here that did surprise me as far as lore, like the sunlight. So sunlight was not an issue as it is today for vampires. It was a semi-weakness, if you will, for Dracula. It was he could still go out in the sun. It wasn't a problem. He just couldn't. He didn't have the same level of power, if I understood correctly when I was reading it. So, what did you guys think of the lore, and did you find anything surprising? Anybody want to start?
I thought Dracula had to be inactive at night. I didn't, and here again, I may have just missed it, but that's kind of what I thought is, when it's at night, he has to be like in his coffin, because when Jonathan's visiting, that they only converse at night.
Mhm.
Did I miss that then? Because I thought they said that he could go out in the daytime, but he couldn't transform. He couldn't travel. He couldn't he couldn't control the weather, but he could still go outside. And he had to gather his strength during the day by being in the coffin, but wasn't necessary. Like, he didn't burn up in the sunlight like we see in vampire lore today.
Yeah,
Because there's a
I'm with
couple of
you,
scenes where he actually does go out during the day.
Yeah, I didn't Mina and Jonathan see him in like Piccadilly Circus or something when they were in London, but I wasn't paying attention on whether that was day or night.
Danielle, do you remember about that?
Oh, so Saf asked a question. Oh, she asked about that. So the author of Carmilla is Sheridan Le Fanu. I'm going to have to look that up, because I'd be interested in reading it. I really liked getting a little bit familiar with the old vampire stuff instead of all the new romanticized vampire lore.
Yeah, I don't have like a whole lot of point of reference, like other than maybe like Twilight or like Sookie Stackhouse or something. So yeah, I don't know like the rules as far as being able to go out in the day or night. But yeah, in the book, Dracula definitely seemed to be able to get about in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he just sparkles. That's all.
I'm sorry, Jeff. What was that?
I'm just pretty sure if he goes out, he just sparkles. That's I think I read that part.
I still don't understand where that came from, but we're not here to talk about Twilight. So the dirt, the 50 cases of dirt, that was confusing for me. I had to actually go back and look it up again, because I was like, why is this dirt so important? And why does it have to be spread throughout the city? Did you guys catch what that was all about?
Well, Dracula has to rest in the dirt, and it has to be dirt from like where he was from, where he's buried, according to the book. And then he spread it out all over the city so that he would have multiple places to rest.
Yep.
Okay. I totally missed that. I tried going back to find out what was going on with it, and I couldn't find the information. Steve and Brandy, you guys are awfully quiet. Steve's like, I read Anne Rice, so none of this is new to me.
Well, I liked the lore of the whole garlic thing, and they were giving my gosh. What is Mina's cousin? Is it her cousin? Anna
Yeah.
and
Lucy?
Lucy. Yeah,
Sheesh.
Lucy. I know. It's been. I read this book at the beginning of the month, so this is like 10 books ago, guys. But I think like that was a cool part of vampire lore that we get. And I also have to say I enjoyed like the Nosferatu reference. Seeing where that came from. Nosferatu. It was mentioned a couple of times what they call vampire. And having read Nosferatu, that was pretty cool and then getting to know Van Helsing, because I knew he existed and I knew about him and I really liked his character. I just didn't, there was a movie about him or something it was a Hugh Jackman or something like that.
Mhm.
And so I didn't really know he was really in the story because I didn't know a lot about Dracula. So it was cool. Oh, there's actually a Van Helsing dude. So I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, I knew I recognized the name, but I couldn't think of where from.
So Ashley says, I thought they only talked at night because Dracula was prepping for the trip since he couldn't necessarily feed off of the crew. So I guess he was out feeding at night or during the day. I'm not sure what she's saying here. Saf says, did vampire tropes start with Dracula or were they already around? That's a good question. Now, I do know that this story was based on some folk tales. So it wasn't, I don't think he made up Dracula, but he made up the character Dracula, but it was based on folk tales from that area.
So
that's all I know.
there are folk legends of vampires, and then there's kind of what's modern, modern to Stoker's time of kind of vampire lore. Like garlic is from folk tales. The crucifix is from more modern tellings of vampires.
That's good. I mean, good to know. I didn't know all that information. So let's talk about the characters. I was surprised about Van Helsing being an old doctor, if you will. I was expecting this young, vampire hunter dressed all in leather. Anybody else?
Hugh Jackman, in other words.
Yeah, I wanted him to have adamantium blades come out of his fist.
So, Brandy, you talked about the romance. Which romance did you like? Mina and John, or was it Lucy and her 3 suitors?
I liked I liked the Lucy stuff. Everybody kind of chasing after her, and they all kind of still love her even though she makes a choice, and they fight for her and do all this. I love that stuff. So.
And even after the fact, even after she's no longer in the picture, they continue. They all kind of bond together over that.
Even Van Helsing was just like enamored by her, and Mina, and dang, but Lucy must have had it going on, I guess.
I don't know. I'm starting to think Bram Stoker was a simp. It's just all the guys in his books are like, oh, these women are so wonderful.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I always kind of read, and I always assume that fiction from back in the day is going to be, especially written by a man, is going to fail the Batchelder test, or I think that's what it's called, where these series of questions of if there is a woman in the book, is she just a love interest? Is she does she talk only about being a love interest? All that sort of stuff. And actually, Lucy was a little bit of the damsel in distress, and probably not as wouldn't pass any test from a feminist perspective today. But Mina actually, and I think someone else said it, I think maybe Danielle said it, she kind of was the brains of the operation. She was typing up the narratives, and she had that connection to Dracula, and she was feeding them information, and she was, and she always wanted to be part of the action, and it was the guys who were like, no, you stay behind. But so I was actually surprised by that, given the age of the narrative, that they would have such a strong female character coming forward.
And even when they had decided they had to cut her out because they recognized that she anything she knew could get passed on to Dracula. It was a hard decision for them. It wasn't just like, oh, she's just a woman, we don't really need her. It was, we really don't want to have to do this, but it's, and ultimately she kind of gets them off the hook. She's the one that says, hey, you guys can't tell me anything, because she realizes.
I was so frustrated whenever they were like trying to keep her safe and like left her behind. I just knew Dracula was going to get to her, and I was like, this is crap. Like, why didn't they take her with them?
Yeah. Ashley says Dracula had to travel by ship and wouldn't be able to feed off the crew. Oh, because they would find out there's a vamp on board. I thought the whole ship thing was interesting because I had forgotten, and I think I must have read it somewhere because once they talked about it, I remember, is that he can't cross over running water without help. So he needs a ship or a carriage or some way he has to be carried across. I thought that was really interesting. I forgot to bring that up when we were talking about lore.
Yeah, and his power over the weather was something that I had never known. I'd never heard of that in even modern vampire stuff. So that one was a new one to me. And transforming into a dog. I always, you pictured, it was very stereotypical of, Dracula turning into the bat, flying away. But the transforming into the dog was also a new one on me.
I wonder if that's where like the werewolf thing came from, or is that separate folklore?
Good question.
So Ashley says, so he would go hunt at night and try to consume as much blood and rest as possible so he could prepare for the trip. And he didn't want to be found out. Although he didn't do a very good job with that, because he did end up feeding on the crew. All down to the very last one of them, the captain.
That's like me when there are Reese's peanut butter cups in the house. I swear I'm not going to eat them, but...
Yes, the staff here. Yeah, there was a chapter where everybody on the boat was disappearing.
It's like John and Candy Corn.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys though. I was a little confused about how you were turned. I felt like he was feeding off Harker. Maybe I'm wrong, but he never turned into a vampire. But Lucy did, and Mina didn't. So was it like it didn't get to a certain stage? Or I was really confused about how them biting you would not make you turn into a vampire, but some people did.
Great question. I had the same question.
Oh, good.
So anybody know?
So this is partially informed by watching Buffy, but there is a scene in here where Dracula makes Mina drink his blood. And so that, I think, is the kind of mechanism where if you, right before they die, if the person drinks the vampire's blood, then that's how they become a vampire.
So we're assuming that at some point Lucy must have drank Dracula's blood.
Yeah, I don't think Lucy, if that's ever shown. We do see Mina drinking Dracula's blood.
Okay, yeah, because there were lots of people with the bite marks, and I always thought, oh, that means you're a vampire now because you got bit. But
that does explain why the children didn't turn. Like they found the one child that was still not alive. It's not alive, and it didn't turn. It must have been because of that. That's a good point, John. Jeff, do you agree?
I think so. I like John's approach. I was trying not to confuse my canon from like the Anne Rice books and other vampire stuff when I was reading it. But I think what I had to do is kind of connect the dots with my own head canon, in that it was a virus that could like build up over time, either through the bite or John pointed out, making them drink your blood, and then you would have to die. I think it's that last step is you have to die, and if you don't, like Jonathan kind of healed and recuperated from it. But that's just headcanon. That's just what I was trying to make sense of when I was reading it.
That's a good point too.
Makes more sense. Thanks,
Danielle,
guys.
do you have any thoughts about how they're turned?
I had some thoughts, but they kind of went away. I just saw it as kind of like a slow thing, and I found it interesting that, and I don't know if this is accurate or not, but like Mina drank his blood, and then it was like he had some kind of control over her. So I was like, well, do you still change, even if you don't drink Dracula's blood, but then he just doesn't maybe have that, how she had the connection with him through the hypnotism and everything like that. So I don't know. It was a little bit sketchy for me too.
I almost thought she was at the same stage that Renfield was at, like kind of on their way, but not fully turned or converted, however you say it.
I'm glad you brought up Renfield, because I thought his story was probably the most interesting, because you really learned a lot about Dracula through the interaction between Seawald and Renfield. And at first I thought it was just a coincidence that he was just happened to have this patient in the mental hospital that had this, I can't remember what they ended up calling it, where he was trying to consume lives so he could live forever. And that was just going to give the doctor kind of an insight into what was going on with Dracula, like some way to say, oh, he's just suffering from this same kind of mental disorder. And that was going to be a way to draw out the story, but that wasn't the case. So I thought that was interesting. Now, where did Renfield get that information? What made him think that consuming lives would extend his? Was it really a mental disorder, or did he have information about Dracula prior to Dracula coming to London? That was never answered. I was curious what you guys thought about that. Nobody?
I don't know. That was something I was confused about too.
John,
So the reason why I bring it up is because when we talk about the adaptations,
what does Buffy say?
Yeah, that I don't have a clue on.
Oh, okay.
Keanu Reeves, John, it's explained in that movie that Renfield was the prior person to go to meet Dracula, and he came back all crazy. And so I went back and I started looking at Wikipedia and other places, like, hey, did I miss that in the book? Was he supposed to have been the person that John was replacing? But I couldn't find that it was anything said in the book. So I was just curious if I missed something. If you guys noticed, like, where Renfield came from.
It's funny you say that you liked his story. For me, he was the piece of the story that I thought I was missing things too with him. And I thought I don't know where he came from and what he did. He didn't really propel the story forward that much. So I almost felt like we could have cut out everything with Renfield and not missed anything with this book. But it's cool to see that you liked him.
Well, he was the means for Mina to get. He let Dracula in. Somebody had to invite him in.
We could have someone else let Dracula in. I didn't. Like he just felt really kind of tangential and off to the side for me. But maybe I didn't. Maybe I was missing something as I read it.
No, I could understand your feelings. I just thought his story was interesting, especially the way that he would escape and then would readily come back. Like you think somebody's going to escape from a mental hospital, they're going to get far away, but he would escape and then they'd find him the next day and he's like, okay, cool, let's go. It kind of added some mystery to it. You knew it has something to do with Dracula because of what the things that he was saying. And I thought that him wanting to like the cat so that he could feed the birds to the cat because he fed the spiders to the birds. And the more lives that the thing that you consume has consumed, it's just that whole concept was really interesting to me. So
I did feel too like that part of the story gave us insight into Seward a little more, like who he was and what his profession was and how he dealt with his patients, and maybe a little of that. I don't know.
Maybe that's what his purpose was.
I'll go with that.
Just trying to give him some purpose here. No,
I wanted more Quincy. I wanted to see the Texan do more.
See Morris.
Yeah.
But no, he's anyway. Why did the Texan have to be the one to die in the end? I don't know.
Right.
Well,
Stupid
at
American.
least there were Texans. I didn't see any New Mexicans in that book.
Well, do you guys have anything more you want to talk about for the book before we start talking about the adaptations of said book?
I do have thoughts on the ending because all of you have said it was anticlimactic, and I think my writer's brain goes to it was just really poor choices in how it was written. So not only is this whole thing written as the postulary, after the fact letters and in journals and things like that, but also all of that action was literally viewed from hundreds of yards away through a spyglass.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me of a little bit of the last Hobbit movie, the Battle of the Five Armies, when our main protagonist, Bilbo Baggins, is knocked out and is sleeping through the 45-minute climax of that movie. And that was the biggest thing for me. Like, we've built up Dracula, he's so powerful, it's so scary, and what are we going to do when we find him? We have a little fight with the villager type people, and then a very anticlimactic, very poorly described. There's no feeling of any of those characters involved. There's no, I felt a gash across my arm, the burning, searing, there's nothing, no emotion of the people involved, and no immediacy. And I think for me, that's where it fell flat. So as a writer, I was like, I don't think this is a sign of the times. I think this is a sign of a choice that Bram Stoker made, and he just went with it. And I don't know why this is to that end. Like, how is this traveled on and become the legend that it is, and the prototypical vampire story? Because that to me was just a poor writing choice. Now, I'm going to be honest and say Bram Stoker has sold more novels than I have. So who am I to judge? But it just felt odd. Just like, really? We're going to watch this battle through spyglasses from a hill far away? It's weird.
I wondered at that time if it wasn't so that we wouldn't know the outcome as the reader. So because everything is told to us from Mina's viewpoint through the spyglass, we don't know what's going to happen to the people. Are they going to survive? Because if John was the one who was writing it, or Van Helsing, and any of them had been the one telling the story from the viewpoint, we would know that they made it. So it took, but I don't think having us reading it as a classic and already knowing the outcome, if that made it worse, because we didn't feel that suspense about what's going to happen, who's going to make it out. And then if you also look at the whole story, the one person that doesn't make it is the one person who you don't see their point of view at all. You'd realize that Quincy does not have a point of view at all in the whole story. He's the only one who doesn't make it. It's almost like Bram Stoker couldn't bring himself to destroy any of the characters that may have been beloved by the end of the book. So I felt that's one of the things that also kind of was like, really? But so the ending did disappoint me in many ways. But yeah, what Jeff said, definitely the fact that you were literally a distance away from what was happening. And it wasn't really told that well either. I mean, I've read much better battle fighting scenes than that one as well. So it was also kind of, I couldn't really, I don't know about you guys, but I had a hard time even figuring out what was happening. I had to go back and it was like, wait, what? Who got this? What happened? So overall, it sounds like this book kind of fell in the okay zone for most people. Anybody? I mean, it was a classic, so I gave it a little bit of a higher. I didn't actually rate it on Goodreads. I was like, I just don't know what to do, because it would be a 3-star book any other time. But do I give it the extra star because it's a classic? And I didn't do that for Neuromancer. Think of all the stuff that Neuromancer has. A lot of things have come out in pop culture because of that book, and I still couldn't bring myself to rate it higher than a 2-star. So I don't know. But let's talk about the adaptations of. So I watched 2, or I should say, I tried to watch 2. The whole purpose of this actual meetup was originally to watch the Netflix TV series adaptation of Dracula. And then we said, hey, let's read the book first and then watch it. And then it'll be even more interesting conversation. And I couldn't even make it through the first episode. So I'm curious to see what the rest of you thought. John, how about you?
I did make it through all three, and honestly, stopping in the middle of the first was the right decision. Although, what's crazy about the third episode is they actually take the story to modern times, and had they just done that and done it well, it would have been an interesting movie. Of course, they didn't do it well, so it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't help that Steve already spoiled that he didn't enjoy it on the forums. I was like, okay.
Oh, you hadn't watched them yet?
I hadn't watched it before Steve posted it. I actually watched them all last night.
Steve,
Oh, okay.
Wow.
That's a marathon. Those are huge.
Yeah,
I
that's
waited
like 3.5
until
hours.
Stacy told me. I was like, I don't know, Stacy. Like, I kind of feel Stacy out and see if I could talk to her about it. Then I'm like, oh, good, okay, we can talk now. But yeah, we got about halfway through the first
40
episode,
minutes,
a good chunk through the first episode, and I was just like, I don't think I can do this. I don't know. Then we started to kind of fast forward and see where it was going, and we did catch a little bit of the modern in the third episode, and some of the stuff we were just like, oh yeah, I'm good. I was so excited though, because that little BBC sign at the beginning just really gets me so excited, because I just love all that stuff.
And it's the same creative team that did Sherlock. It was Mark Gatiss and Stephen Moffat.
That hurts my heart.
I know, it's heartbreaking. I couldn't do it.
Daniel, what did
Danielle,
you
did you make
think?
it?
And no, I watched like 30 minutes and then I got on the forum to see if we were still watching it. Like, are we still doing this? And then when I saw everybody's reactions, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to put myself through that. So yeah, I didn't make it very far.
It started to lose me, like in the beginning there with, did you have sex with Dracula?
Yeah.
And I was just like,
Yeah.
Okay, maybe this isn't going to be like the book at all. I don't, why?
Well, it turned vampirism into an STD.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, what? Brandy said that you guys stopped, so obviously you didn't watch all of them, but.
Well, when there was the whole, did you have sex with Dracula? And she was like, what is going on with this show? And I'm like, hold on, let's give it some time. And then like 20 minutes in, we're like, this is really stupid. What is going on with, and it's like, do you like this? And she's like, no, and I don't. It's like, this is really dumb. So we kept watching, and it's like, this is stupid. And
I mean,
just one thing after another. And it was kind of, then we finally got to the point where it's like, yeah, I can't do this anymore.
yeah.
I
like smut. I read smut. I love smut. Don't get me wrong. This was not well placed. I don't know. It didn't belong in my mind with Dracula. Having just read it and felt like I was reading Jane Austen vampires, it was just like, no. Anyway, I think Jeff has thoughts.
Yes, let's hear what Jeff has to say.
He liked it.
I don't often have thoughts, and I know you have to like pull my opinion out of me on these shows, but
It's really hard.
I didn't know people were bailing on this thing. I watched the whole thing. I intently focused. I was like John. I watched the whole thing. I didn't marathon it quite like John, but I didn't. Part of me was like, I think I'm not enjoying this because I just read the book, and I was trying to make it fit the book. Wait, is this? I couldn't tell if Jonathan was Renfield at the beginning because he was kind of like Renfield-like, and then he was. I was did I not read this book carefully enough? Was Jonathan this far transformed when he escaped? I was so confused trying to make it fit and thinking it was me, thinking like, I really screwed up when I read this book. I must have not been paying attention. And then I realized, oh, it's an adaptation, but not even really trying to be close, but sort of being close. I was confused. I was all over the place. So I was like, I'm not going to go into this being super negative when I get on the show. I'm going to find things I like about it because I don't want to be Mr. Negative Pants. But so I will say, There were some things I did like. There were some creepy moments, like the people in the box. I don't know if you guys got that far, but Jonathan's like exploring Dracula's castle, and he finds these boxes, and there's people's belongings in it. And then like you uncover the belongings, and the people are actually in the box, and they're all like folded up and zombie-ish and coming out after him. I was like, this is freaky. Like, this is scary stuff. But then Jonathan runs almost 25 feet down the hall when he's like, phew, got away from them. Anyway, let me look around some more. What else do we have?
Yeah.
If I had those things at my back, I would be out of there. Like, I would be 4 floors up, barricaded in my room, crying probably. But so there were just pieces. I was like, I'm on board. I'm going into it. Yeah. And then Dracula's character was weird because he started becoming modern and quippy. Like, he's like too modern, like in his delivery of some stuff and joking around, and it's like, what is going on? And then the reveal of Agatha Van Helsing instead of Abraham Van Helsing. I was like, oh, okay. All right, I'm going with it. So stop trying to make it fit. That one's okay. Not making it fit. It's not me. They're adapting it, and I'll go with the adaptation because it's Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss. They're clever. I'm gonna trust in them. And some parts worked, some parts didn't. The ship thing was good. All right, we're gonna see more of what happened in the ship. Like, okay, they've taken liberties to go, this event happened in the book, and now we're gonna flesh out all the stuff you didn't see in the book. Okay, cool, I'm on board. Let's watch this. And then Agatha Van Helsing's there again, and I'm like, wait, what? And then I didn't know. I either it wasn't in the trailer or I didn't watch the trailer carefully enough. I didn't know there was a modern element to it. So then when he walks up on the beach, I'm like, and the helicopter is shining down. Then I'm trying to make the headcanon work. Like, his shirt's not. I rewound it. I was like, wait, his shirt's not dirty. The box wasn't covered in anything. Like, that was a real cheat. That it looks like the box just landed on the ocean floor. He pops out fresh as a daisy, but it's been 100 years. That part threw me, and then they did explain it later at the Harkness Institute for Vampire Studies and whatever else they do there, sun manipulation. But yeah, I don't know. And then I did kind of come back on board with the modern part, being once I figured out it was Lucy, John Seward, and Quincy, like they were doing modern day versions of the Lucy story in modern times. And I guess was Arthur her gay bestie? Was that Arthur?
Oh God, did they go there with that?
I don't know. So
I never picked up on if her bestie was supposed to be Arthur or not. I never quite got that.
Yeah, I should go look that up. But yeah, so they had Lucy was this kind of club hopping, admired by all these guys. John Seward has this like unrequited crush on her. Quincy, it looks like Quincy's gonna get her. In this version, it looks like they're gonna get married. He's like making out with her in front of John and making him sad little puppy dog. And but then here comes then the lady is then there's Dr. Helsing, who's not Agatha, it's her great grand niece, which I hate that too, because I just hate casting where it's like you who look exactly like this person are the great descendant of them. It's like, that's not how genes work, but okay, it's a show, whatever. But anyhow, so I wasn't overblown by it. I was a little let down by my besties of Moffat and Gatiss. Although Mark Gatiss did have a great role in it.
Swimming in the dough. I guess she means money. Dracula is real. That's my conspiracy. He's swimming in the dough of Bram Stoker. So they're both still alive, and they're swimming in the dough. And they're watching this video right now going, how dare they not like.
With Tupac
the
Elvis.
only challenge with that theory is that Dracula's in the public domain, so everybody can take it and rip it off now, which is why there's 30-odd adaptations of it.
30-odd bad adaptations. Saf, they're not in the book. Were there in the show other monsters?
I think she's. I think.
Just in
Is she
general?
answering a different question?
No, I think it's a reference to the crucifix being like kryptonite for
Oh.
vampires. I think that's what.
Well, the show did have a very good explanation for that, which I kind of liked. I kind of liked the core explanation, and then as it became a device in the show, I really didn't like it. But as Dracula drinks the blood of people, he gains their knowledge. So the fact that he had drank all these Romanian peasants over the years that had so many, a superstitious fervor over their religion is why it's like embedded in him, and why he has to like be, because they believed it, he now has to believe it. And then where that kind of went off the rails for me, I don't know, John, you tell me, but like later on he would, he drank this guy, he killed this guy, and then all of a sudden he knew what cell phones were and the internet was and all this stuff. And so I didn't like that part of it, but I like that, like, ooh, all these rules are stuck to him, like he has to be invited in and all this stuff because he's drank so many people that also believed it.
Was that in the book too, the have to be invited in thing?
Mm-hmm.
It is.
I
Yeah.
think I remember that in the book, but it's all kind of muddy. Okay.
Yeah, because Renfield actually invited him in. That's how he was able to attack Mina.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember how he was able to attack Lucy. I don't know if the book addressed it.
She
Okay.
must have let him in somehow. That's a good question. I don't remember. Oh my God. So going back to the book really quick, Danielle talked earlier about how frustrated she was when they like left Mina. They're like, oh, she's fine over there. And Dracula got to her. And we all know, knowing the story, that was going to happen. But one of the other things that really frustrated me when Lucy's mom kept interfering with Van Helsing trying to save her daughter. Oh my God. Oh, sorry. I meant to say that earlier and I just now remember, but geez.
Yeah, that was frustrating.
Like, how many of these men have to drain themselves to save your daughter and you're just going to take all the garlic away? Jeez. So we talked about the TV show. I don't know how many. So after failing to watch the show, I thought I've got to watch some adaptation. It's something to get that bad taste out of my mouth, first of all. And so I went and downloaded the Keanu Reeves, Gary Oldman version of the movie, the adaptation. I couldn't make it through that either. And I love Keanu Reeves, but he has no business with a British accent. He cannot do it well. It was awful.
Can we just all admit that he is not a good actor? I love Keanu Reeves. He's cool. I want to hang out with him. I want to have a beer with the guy. I want to he seems like a really nice person. Like, he's cool. He's like a good John Wick. He's, whatever. He's not a good actor. Can we just all admit it?
I will admit that is the case.
But he gets a pass on everything.
He gets a pass on everything.
He doesn't have to be a good actor.
Right?
Keanu.
He's so dreamy. Yeah,
Steve,
Well,
I'm Neo.
yeah.
it's just
I'm John Parker.
Jeff, the new actor. He's the new Matrix. Neo.
I'll take all of Keanu Reeves' parts, and then he can go be Mr. Philanthropist. And
Yeah.
But
yeah, we were gonna watch it, but we didn't get to it. So
don't even.
I have heard that it is the most faithful adaptation of the book, is what I was told by I forget his name, but anyway, I heard that it was the most faithful adaptation. So Danielle, have
Bram
you seen
Stoker
it?
told you that?
I don't think so.
No.
Bram Stoker, who's still alive, came and told Steve that.
I didn't invite him in, but he gave me that tidbit.
It's
Oh my gosh.
It's the most faithful, but it is still not at all. I mean, I only watched the first 40% of it, and there are a lot of, like, Dracula's whole purpose for going to London is because Mina is his reincarnated wife. What?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Like,
I forgot about that.
yeah.
So I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna pose a question to everyone, and I'll start by saying, first, I have a rule with adaptations. All it needs to be is an exercise in formatting. That's my rule. I've done adaptations of my own work, and all it is, it's 92% just putting it in the screenplay format, but take the dialogue, take the actions from the original book, and then tie up a couple little things for screen that you have to with that other 8%. So having said that, is the reason why it's so challenging to have a good adaptation of Dracula because the book isn't that good. The source material isn't that good. So how do you, when you're starting with crap, sorry, it's not crap, but when you're starting with something that's a C+, how do you turn it into an A?
That's a good question. Also, I would imagine the formatting of the book would be hard to turn into a screenplay because your dialogue is different. A lot of it is hearsay. So it's, yeah, that would, but the bones of the story is still there. I mean, you could still make a pretty good story with the bones of it and make changes to improve the areas where it falls short.
Also, I kind of feel like there should be, what do you call it? A content warning label, like on an adaptation. This is either an adaptation of the story or loosely based on the story. Like, because pieces of the story, you can know what you're getting. Like, do not expect the story. This is not an adaptation word for word or storyline for storyline. I think we need those. I need a trigger warning.
Netflix should have said the character names are the same, but nothing else is.
I will say, if our Dark Tower reading group ever does watch the movie, my warning at the beginning will be, this is loosely based on skimming about 3/4 of the Wikipedia page for the Dark Tower series.
See, now we have challenge accepted. We're gonna have to watch it.
I'm not watching it. I don't want to be sad.
I'll watch it after we're done.
Really?
Yeah.
It's only like 82 minutes, so it won't really eat up much of your life.
Is that short?
It's less than the first episode of Dracula, I think.
We'll see. I don't know. I want them to make like a Game of Thrones type HBO Max or HBO show of the Dark Tower, and be very close.
Well, Amazon recently had a pilot for a Dark Tower series, and they think it tested, but they didn't pursue it, probably because the movie was such a stinker. But
also, guess what they didn't do, Steve? They didn't use the Jeff Lane method of adapting a screenplay. They started it. So I think, is it Glenn Mazzara, who was the Walking Dead, the original Walking Dead showrunner? He was the showrunner on the Dark Tower, and he was on a podcast where he described the whole first episode, and it starts off in Old Gilead, and right around the time that Martin is seducing. Oh, never mind. Hold on. Backing up.
Yeah.
Anyway, it kind of starts a little bit at the beginning, but basically what he described was cool, really cool, but it's not the books. It's like an interpretation of the books.
Nice recovery there, Jeff.
Thanks. Sorry. Why don't you guys read that series? Come on.
Speaking of adaptations, Jeff, are there any updates on the One Way movie?
No updates. I've seen some of the footage, and it's awesome. They all did a great job, but I gotta reach back out and talk to the director again.
Tell us who we have to threaten.
Yeah,
we'll make it happen.
Who do I have to write letters to?
Yeah, we should have like a whole show just on adaptations.
That's a great idea.
Steve, I think you should do that. John, Danielle, I won't. Not here.
We watched Stand By Me. Was it a few weeks ago? Great adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
That's one that if you read the novella and you watch the movie, it's like, yes, a few things are cut out. Like one of Gordy's stories that he wrote is kind of like a cutaway in the novella. But other than that, like some of the dialogue, Moons and Goochers stuff, that stuff's for babies. All of that is like copy and paste right out of Stephen King's words. That's a good adaptation. And guess what? Stand By Me. I know not everybody loved it, but pretty good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
I loved it.
I gave it 4 stars. Calm down.
So one of the things we need to do now that Brandy and Steve, have you finished The Shining?
It was better than Star Wars. What?
Oh, here we go with Star Wars. Don't deflect
What
on the
was the
fact that
question?
you haven't
Sorry.
finished The Shining yet.
Oh
Well,
no,
when-
I haven't. I know I haven't been able to.
I've already gone
busy.
through The Shining and Doctor Sleep.
My problem is House of Leaves.
Loved them.
Tomorrow
Danielle,
is
are you reading
Leaves
House of Leaves with us, Danielle?
No, I guess not.
It is insane.
You have a day. Oh, so.
Yeah.
Day. One day.
I should have started that book at the beginning of the month. I really regret it. It needs a lot of time. So if you're ever going to read House of Leaves, give yourself a good solid month to get through it and take breaks. And
That's taking all my reading time.
it's a great book,
All
but
my time.
it's a lot.
Well, I know that Brandy had planned to have the Jeff Lane experience with that.
Mhm.
So now that she's read both books, she plans to read or watch the Kubrick Shining and the Dr. Sleep movie.
But I don't think I want to now that I read the books. I feel like I love the books so much, and I already know what's coming with the Kubrick movie. And both movies, they're not the same as the books at all. And I just want to stay on my high of the books right now.
Then let's put it off.
They're so good.
It's-
There's so much stuff in the books that I was just blown away by.
They
And
are
I don't
great.
mean to turn this into a
Well, we have nothing else to talk about.
Danny Torrance talk. But I loved them both.
It'll just be fun to have add those to the conversation if we do an adaptation show.
Yeah.
Because those, like you said, they are different than the books, but so widely popular.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah, they're
fun.
not bad, the adaptations, but there's just so much more you get in the books. Probably because a lot of it goes on with either Danny, that you can't really get a kid's perspective that you get in the book. I don't know. There's just so much in the book that you just don't get in the movies at all.
There was a 90s miniseries that Stephen King kind of endorses as the preferred method of The Shining that is much closer to the book. Instead of an axe, he's got the roque mallet and the topiary animals and all that stuff. So,
And the bug is red.
There's another adaptation of it?
Yes, it's a mini series. I haven't seen it myself. The main character, isn't he from Wings? The
yeah,
TV show?
Steven Weber.
Oh, he does a lot of Stephen King's audiobooks.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep. I haven't seen it. Maybe we have to watch. I've heard it's not very good. That's why I haven't watched it. But is it one of those where it's only good if you've read the book and you can really, so there are people who have not read the book of Dune aren't enjoying the new Dune movie because it's supposedly more true to the story in the book and not as action packed as people are expecting in movies nowadays. So I'm wondering if that's the case with The Shining.
Well, we had that experience in our house because our son read the book and we didn't. And we were just kind of like, it's okay. And he was like, awesome. It's great. He's also 16. So.
All right. Well, let's wrap up. We're already at an hour. Really quick, let's talk about our ratings. So I've already said it's a 3-star book with an extra star for being a classic. John, how about you?
I gave it 3 stars.
3 stars? Danielle?
I did too.
You gave it 2 or you
I-
also gave it
I also gave it 3 stars.
Brandy?
I gave it 4. I loved it. It wasn't what I was expecting, but that's okay.
Steve?
3 stars. It does not get an extra star for being a classic. Sorry, Bram Stoker. You don't get the extra star. But it is. I can't see why it's beloved and why it's influenced a lot. So it was okay.
And Jeff?
I gave it 3.5 cloves of garlic out of 5. I might have added an extra one, not because it's a classic, but I'm gonna grade on a curve because of the time, its age. I think we have modern tastes and sensibilities when it comes to action and adventure and some of that stuff. So I'm going to grade a little bit on a curve, give it the 3.5.
Okay.
That's where a lot of my rating came from too. For that time, it must have been such a racy type of a story, and I mean, I just think that it was probably for its time, like real. I don't know. I tried to think about that too.
So just really quickly, Carmilla, the staff I mentioned earlier, is an 1872 Gothic novella by Irish author Sheridan Le Fanu, one of the early works of vampire fiction, predating Bram Stoker's Dracula by 26 years. It is a story narrated by a young woman preyed upon by a female vampire named Carmilla, later revealed to be Marcilla, a countess. The character is a prototypical example of a lesbian vampire expressing romantic desires toward the protagonist.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
1872 lesbian.
So
Wow, that is
That's
interesting.
gotta be
Yeah.
good.
I wonder if that's the reason why it wasn't as popular. Because during that period of time, I would think that's something that they would be like, no, no, no.
It does say that it never acknowledges homosexuality as an antagonistic trait, leaving it subtle and morally ambiguous. So yeah, maybe that is why.
In the Victorian era was at least on the surface, it was a little bit more puritanical and pearl clutching, and so that I could see why people would want to brush that under the carpet.
I love that pearl clutching.
So Saf says here, when are we watching the best vampire media, Twilight?
Oh boy.
Let's do it, Saf. I'm with Saf. I'll do it. I'm in.
I loved the Twilight movies.
I did too, and I watched them all as they came out. I read all the books, and I have to say, was I in my early 30s when I read them? Maybe
Old enough to know better, yeah.
No, they were awesome.
Me too.
And at that time,
I'm
I loved them, and I was at a time where it was. But then when I go back now, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I'm just in a different place. But I did love them when I read them.
I love them.
Hold on, little spider monkey. We'll watch it.
Yes.
I'll watch it.
I'll watch it with you guys. Who's in
What would be-
Twilight?
Steve's
What would
willing
be
to watch
great?
it.
What would be
Let's
great
do it.
is if Steve ends up hating Star Wars, hating Marvel, but loving Twilight.
Yeah.
That'll just make it good.
To be fair, I don't hate Star Wars. I think the 3 through 5 are okay. Rogue One was good. Solo was actually better than it gets credit for. It was a mess, but it was okay. The other ones are garbage. Sorry. Don't come at me. But I don't like I hate Marvel, so sorry.
Didn't I make you
gosh.
watch the Twilight movies with me?
I tried to watch the one of them.
Well, it was just one. Oh,
Yeah.
I think I tried to make my kids watch them, and they DNF'd too. They were like, "Mom, you're not doing this with you."
I've got a 13-year-old and 17-year-old daughters. This house is infused with Twilight, so I'll watch it with you guys.
I will say the first book I read this year on my 110 book journey was that Twilight book that from Edward's perspective, The Midnight Sun, that just came out. It was okay. I thought it was okay.
John, are you in? Let's watch Twilight and talk about it.
I don't know. I don't know that I can do it.
I know Daniel will watch it from Iron
Oh yeah.
Rain Books.
Iron Rain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Danielle, are you in? What do you think?
Yeah, I'll do it.
All right, Saf.
All of the
your
movies?
wish is my command. We will put that on the calendar.
This is going to be great.
Oh,
Thank
my
you
gosh.
all for joining me today and for discussing our journey with Dracula and the Netflix adaptation. I'm sorry that we did not love it and we couldn't sit here and go, oh, it's the best thing I ever read and the show was top notch. But not all the shows can be that exciting. Sometimes they have to be, depressing like today's.
Well, I think
But
it makes it
thank-
fun.
Yes, it would have been great if Jeff was like, this was the best BBC adaptation I've ever watched.
Ever.
But I have to say thank you, Jeff, for watching it with your critical eye and bringing notes, even though you and John are the only ones who got as far as you did, and we have no idea what you're talking about.
John, I can't believe you binged that. I mean, that's
In a
day?
That's
Yeah.
tough.
Well,
Respect.
I watched it at 1.5 speed, and I was doing other things. So, and mind you, I watched it at 1.5 speed, and it still felt long.
Oh my gosh.
That's hilarious. I'm gonna have to watch the Keanu Reeves one and see if it'll let me speed it up so I can just get through it. So maybe
Isn't
it'll
there
get
2015 or 2016? Wasn't there another Dracula that came out?
There was what was it, Dracula Untold, or
Hmm.
the what was it, Dracula's Legend, Untold Legend, or something like that. It was like a kind of like an origin story. I think they intended it to be like part of the
Universal
some
Monster
universe
Universe.
thing, yeah, the monster universe or whatever. But it was okay. It was all right.
When
I don't
did
think it was based on
vampires
the book.
become romanticized in media? Like, what was the turning point? Was it Anne Rice? When did they
Sophie
become this?
Stackhouse.
It was before that, I think.
I would hope it was before that. I mean, there's books going back from when I was a kid that romanticized vampires. So I'm curious where that, like, what was the first book that said, "Hey, I'm going to take this horror story and turn it into a romance"?
For me, it was Anne Rice. But I don't know of anything before that. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff, but
Right, Jeff, your homework today is to find out.
To the Wikipedia I fly.
I do know that we are going to be reading the Vampire Chronicles. Is that the name of the trilogy?
Yeah,
Steve?
we're waiting. Summer was going to read it with us, and she was had some life stuff pop up, so we're waiting. I think we're thinking maybe December, January is what.
I already have them, so you just tell me when.
Yeah.
After reading Dracula, I'm actually really curious. I'm reading Salem's Lot right now. Jeff told me that it actually ties into the Dark Tower, so I'm excited about that. And that's a slow. I've read it before, so this is a reread for me, and I thought it would be a little bit faster getting into it because I'd already read it, and I'm still like, oh god, this is taking a long time to get into, but it's still good. It's not one of my favorite Stephen King books, but we'll see.
And
Anyway, I'm rambling.
I'm sorry, really quick. We are reading Beguiled by Night next
Oh
month.
yeah, that's a vampire
So
romance.
it's a vampire, yeah. So
We're
We're reading
lousy
that.
vampires around here.
That show is November 27th,
Mhm.
right after the is it the Wizard in Glass?
I believe so. It's on the calendar.
So those of you who are still watching, Daniel, John, Jeff, you guys are all invited to read that. This is the first time Steve is reading something that actually has the word romance in the genre.
And it was his idea.
I was trying to be fair because
Yeah.
I keep getting shit about not reading books that I just read books that I'm interested in. So I thought it's a vampire romance. I was like, well, I'll try it out.
I may say to him, I read all your books all the time.
So
Come
I
on.
said, I'll read a vampires
So it better be
romance book.
It better be good.
He picked it. No,
So,
I think it looks like it's gonna be good.
so you're all invited to read that with us as well. We're having a meetup with the author. So
Saf is joining us
Oh,
for that.
good, Saf. Danielle,
John,
do you want to read it with us?
Jeff,
When do you guys read it?
It's called
In
Beguiled
November?
by-
November
Oh, yeah.
27th is the meetup.
And it's
Yeah.
it's a pretty small book. I mean, the way I was looking at it is like 200 or 300 pages,
Mhm.
but the pages don't have a lot of words on them. So I was like, oh, we're just gonna fly through this one. But
What was it called again?
Beguiled by Night.
Okay.
yeah,
What's
we're
I'll
gonna,
have to look it up.
we're gonna get to talk to the author too on that 27.
Speaking of books we're reading and talking to the author, Jeff, we have to set up a time in December for the Three Scrooges because we're reading that in December.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah.
And remember what I think I said on another video. If you can, read A Christmas Carol right before it and then just kind of go right into it because it's
Oh yeah.
it
Yes, I'm
can work
excited.
as a sequel. But I wrote purposely in Dickens prose. Otherwise the language can be a little jarring if you aren't like acclimated by reading Christmas Carol first.
I'm excited.
Did you by any chance do the audiobook?
I haven't done the audiobook yet.
What are you waiting for?
I know an audiobook narrator who is amazing. He sounds, hopefully he doesn't take offense, but he sounds like Alan Rickman, like he sounds like Snape. And I was trying to we just couldn't get it to work out where he could do the audiobook. But he actually has an English accent. And I was like, well, I could try it on my own. But man, that could go badly so fast.
Oh,
Well,
you do
but-
good accents.
Yes. I know I enjoyed your accents in
Champions
this
Saga.
paper
The
world.
French.
Mm.
The French.
Maybe I'll give it a try. I don't know if I can sustain it for a whole.
Why don't you do a sample? Let us hear it, and we'll let you know if it's bad.
All
How's
right,
that?
Governor. I'll get that right on over.
Okay, never
See?
mind.
That's not good. Never mind. Yeah, bad idea. Told you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, guys.
Danielle's like, I'm never coming back. We've been
Whatever.
trying.
This is highly entertaining.
This is us all the
These
time.
people are crazy. We're glad you came.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank all of you for coming. I had fun. I really did. It was nice to at least say now I could say I read Dracula,
Mhm.
and it is a good book. If you haven't read it, I still think it's something that you should read because I think everything that you read that has vampires in it afterwards is going to have a whole different background now. So I'm really excited. It's going to be fun to watch Twilight because, man, does that go totally opposite of everything I know about vampires, especially now after reading Dracula. So it'll be fun to watch that with you guys.
I already have regrets.
So please check out the forum, creepingdeath.org. It's in the description below. We have shows at least a couple times a month for group reads that we're doing. And we also do a movie of the month, which I know that we had
Apostle.
something planned. Steve, you want to tell us?
Next Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern time, we're going to be discussing Apostle. It's on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, you can watch it. If you don't have Netflix, then let me know and we can, help you out.
All right. Thank you guys for coming, and we'll see you again very soon, I'm sure. Bye.
Bye.
Guys.